It's always fun to talk with Joel Kotkin, author, professor, and an expert on cities. And lately, he's been focused a lot on Orange County, and his findings worrisome, to say the least. OC may be a great place to live, but fewer and fewer people can afford it, and lots of skilled people are moving elsewhere. And OC doesn't get much respect either. Kotkin says San Diego is way better at promoting itself. So what's Orange County to do? Kotkin's here with some ideas right now on Inside OC. Inside OC is brought to you by...
Each new community 5 Point brings to life represents a promise delivered. Great neighborhoods are more than just places to live, they are places to connect. 5 Point is a proud sponsor of public television and community programming.
Chapman University is a proud sponsor of Inside OC and community programming.
Get the 25-year-olds to live in Laguna for a few years. They're 35, they're gone.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Rick Reiff, and I'm talking with Joel Kotkin. Joel, always great to have you on.
Nice to be here.
When you were on a year and a half ago, you had this OC Vision report, had some cautionary notes. You've now got another report, and I think it's got even more cautionary notes. What's changed, and where's Orange County headed?
Well, I think there have been several things. One, we've lost several major companies. So Orange County is increasingly really a place of small businesses and branch offices. So we don't have that.
And just to go back in just in recent months,
right.
Last couple of years, we've lost...
Well, Broadcom, Western Digital, Vizio,
Allergan.
I mean, you're talking about the bedrock of the Orange County economy.
Yeah, these are big companies that will employ a couple thousand people.
And are contributors to the philanthropic community, help shape the policy and the perception of Orange County. You know, increasingly we're a kind of branch office, but we're not a headquarters town at all.
To be clear, Allergan still has a lot of people here. Broadcom still has a lot of people here. But you're saying when you lose that headquarters, you lose something.
And generally speaking, when companies expand, they expand somewhere else. The executives are not here, the senior executives. And that's what a community like Orange County is now missing. And I think that's going to be part of our problem, part of our marketing problem, and I think part of our talent attraction issues.
But other people say, look, we've got and we'll get into it, you cite some areas of technology where Orange County is very strong. Nobody's got better weather. We've got the same weather as San Diego. You know, we've got beautiful weather here. The roads, relatively speaking, are great to drive on. We've got, we don't have the traffic snarls that you get in downtown LA, for example. So what's to worry?
Well, there's no question that the great asset of Orange County is it's a great place to live. And if you're a person who can afford to live here, the schools are still in pretty good shape. As somebody who moved here 2.5 years ago, in part because of schools, it makes a big difference. So the product is a great product. It really is a terrific product. It is not well marketed. It doesn't seem to have a strategic direction. And we're living in a world in which other people are moving faster. Some of them are lower cost competitors, like in Texas and other places, like Arizona. On the other hand, we also are not competing so well with the higher end, New York, Seattle, Silicon Valley. We're sort of falling behind them as well. And so
you say we're falling behind. We're losing ground to, let's name them, New York City?
It depends on the field. New York in things like business services. The Bay Area in technology, it's not, not even really close anymore. And then if you're losing ground, let's say, in sort of middle class jobs to places like Texas. What happens quite often is the executive lives in Newport Beach, why wouldn't you? And then, but they want to do an expansion, they're going to do it someplace else. And so our working class and middle class population has less opportunities than they might have had earlier.
To what extent are those problems every California city has to deal with, and to what extent is it a uniquely Orange County problem?
Well, certainly not uniquely Orange County. It's a coastal California issue. I mean, the cost of housing here, if you adjust for income, is about 3 times as high as it is in most of the country. So that problem, I think, is pretty well universal. But we don't have the headquarters. We're not identified with any particular industry. Probably medical technology is probably the best one. So we don't have the kind of street cred that a lot of other regions have. And we don't have, like our incomes aren't rising fast enough to meet the cost of housing. Silicon Valley is very expensive, but there are relatively high incomes, which ameliorates
So you're saying
it.
that even though the housing prices in Silicon Valley are higher even than they are here, people make a lot more money on average.
They make much more money, and then there's a demographic issue which we point out, and this is one of the things that struck my co-author Marshall Toplansky and I quite a bit, is we are not doing a great job at attracting millennials. We're really losing this sort of 35 to 44-year-old people with young families. That's definitely happening. And we're becoming old. Orange County is the most rapidly aging large county in California.
I think you mentioned in here, and I've heard some others say it, that Orange County is in danger of becoming a retirement community.
Well, they're called naturally occurring retirement communities, NORCs. and yeah, there are certain areas like Newport Beach. What relatively young person, unless they're from a wealthy family or they robbed a bank, is going to go to Newport Beach? I mean, one of the things that we find was very interesting is we went to a very prominent architecture firm here, and we asked them about their recruitment issues, and they said, we can get the 20-somethings. They'll go live in Laguna for a few years or Huntington Beach, great places to live. But when they get to be 35 and they get married and they think about starting a family, buying a house, they can't stay here. So this company has actually put together an office for their 30-somethings, one in San Antonio and one in Dallas.
I thought that was great, and you didn't mention their name. I was going to bring it up. Maybe you thought we shouldn't mention their name on the air, but it's in your report.
Yes.
If someone wants to read it. But I thought that was fascinating. This firm has 30-somethings working on projects in Orange County, but they're doing it from Texas.
Exactly. I mean that, and that could be the direction. One vision of Orange County is it becomes more and more like a West Palm Beach or Palm Beach County, Florida, or Hawaii, with a wealthy, older population, and those people who have enough money to live anywhere they want. And if you can live anywhere you want, Orange County's high on the list of where you'd want to live. But with a big servant population, they need a lot of people to be servants, to do all the little tasks. But what we don't have and what we're losing is a middle-class, middle-aged population.
So let me just toss out the idea, why fight it? Is that just the way it's going to be and there's nothing really to do about it?
Well, like everything in when you study demographics and economics, there are some trends that they're going to be there whatever you do. You can ameliorate them. You can try to figure out ways of solving problems. Like, for instance, one of the things we've talked about a lot is we have all these retail centers that are either underutilized or half empty. Just drive along, Tustin, and you'll see these places, where the businesses in there a lot of times are pretty marginal. The parking lots are empty. Maybe we should be building housing in those places. Maybe we should be looking at developing the housing that older people might leave their larger homes to go to let's say a townhome.
We've discussed that on the show before. It sounds like a no-brainer. What's the problem with doing it?
Well, one of the big problems is for a lot of municipalities, they rely on the sales tax, and they are afraid of losing their sales tax and then gaining more responsibilities with new population. This is sort of a California issue as well. That's why we have such a surplus of retail space and such a deficit of housing.
Mm-hmm. So again, though, when you do that, don't you get into issues over density, and people are concerned about traffic? If you're going to take basically an empty lot and make it an apartment or a condo, there's more traffic.
Well, here's my take on density and the sort of kind of legislation that the current regime in California wants, where, basically if you're remotely near a transit stop, you can build high density. That's ridiculous. Just go in and ruin one neighborhood after another. But the great thing about doing it on the retail side is that the infrastructure's there, the buildings are already there, you're not screwing up somebody's neighborhood. And I think you have to look at more lower, moderate density, not 8-story apartment buildings. I think that would cause problems. But what I try to talk to the neighborhood groups about is, we have to deal with the housing problems. Let's deal with it in a way that doesn't destroy your neighborhood. And I think Orange County needs to be in the lead in that area. There'll be these fiscal issues, which I think are serious, but we have got to find a way to have housing for A, the service workers, and B, for the young families.
So is that happening yet? Because it seems like these retail centers are there, and as you know, some of the real estate people will tell you, really the real estate vacancy for retail is not that bad. Do you see it happening where there's developers that are chomping at the bit to put in some moderate density housing in these old shopping centers?
Well, I think, Shaheen Sadeki is working on these kinds of projects.
He's known for the anti-mall in
right.
Costa Mesa,
but now they're looking at housing.
Packing district in Anaheim.
Anaheim,
right,
yeah. I mean, I think there are developers all over the country who are beginning to look at this as a great opportunity. And again, it has an advantage that you're not having to go into an area, build new infrastructure. The electricity is there, the parking is there, the water is there. So there's a lot of great advantages to doing this kind of development. The other thing with density, I was at a really remarkable apartment complex near the Spectrum, and they did it right. There's not a lot of traffic generated from there. It almost feels like a European neighborhood. You can design these things right.
You're talking about the apartments around
the Spectrum.
About the Spectrum. Okay.
But the problem that you could get, and it would be detrimental to what Orange County is about, is if you were able to build high density in areas that used to be all single family, then you get what you now see in Los Angeles, where getting on the freeway can take you 20, 25 minutes, and where the whole quality of life, I lived in Los Angeles for 40 years, it just deteriorated to a point where it just wasn't worth it.
Yeah. Just before we get off housing, let's segue a little to an issue that also involves housing, and that's homelessness.
Oh, God.
And you in this report spent some time talking about homelessness, which I would think 10 years ago wouldn't have even been on the radar in the kind of economic report that you just wrote.
Yes, I mean the homeless issue, which has many different aspects, but some of it is a reflection of incredibly high rents that people who are working can't afford. But I also think that this is a societal breakdown that we're now seeing, obviously most intense in places like LA, where there are 55,000 homeless. But there are now, let's say, around 5,000 here in Orange County. It's seeping into neighborhoods where that traditionally was not the case, and it's a failure of our social system.
Is it a competitive relative disadvantage to Orange County, or is this something every major city, including New York and some of the others that are our competitors, also facing?
Any community that has extremely high housing prices is going to have this problem. A quarter of all the homeless in America live either in LA or New York.
Wow. Well, so you touched on housing. Are there any other warning signs, other things that you're concerned about?
Well, one of the things that we worked on, and Marshall's a big data guy, so we have really good analysis on this. Our growth in the high wage sectors has been fairly slow. Our growth in tech, in business services, is not.
Give us 2 or 3 occupations that fall into those.
Well, certainly any STEM kind of jobs.
Which is science, technology, engineering, math.
Right.
Okay.
Those, we've had very mediocre growth. Most of our big competitors are doing better. Same thing with professional business services. That's a high
That's
end.
like accountants, bankers.
Right.
Like
Yeah. High end services, business services. Generally speaking, our even though we come from a good base in those fields, our growth is rather slow. So what's happening is we're falling behind our competitors, at a time when the cost of living continues to go up, and that's really the dangerous thing. Now, again, Los Angeles, it's much worse, but we're getting into a situation where a lot of people in Orange County will never be able to buy a house and are basically going check to check. And obviously there are certain places, parts of Anaheim, parts of Santa Ana, that are particularly affected.
One of the other things I thought was fascinating, I referenced it in the introduction, was the idea of Orange County not doing a very good job of marketing itself. And you compare Orange County to San Diego, where in many ways are very similar, we're right next door to each other. And you say San Diego is doing better, and it's doing better in part because it markets itself better. Right. Explain that.
Well, if you go on the web and you look for what it is like to live in San Diego, would you want to live? You have very, very nicely done
so if you Google
videos.
that, what's it like to live in San Diego?
There'll be lots of great videos. They also have getting more people to tell their own story about what it's like to live in San Diego. Orange County, which I agree is in many ways as nice, if not nicer, a place to live. When you try to find videos of Orange County, I mean, there's occasional tourist things, almost nothing that would persuade you to even think about living here. One of the funniest things is when you ask certain questions, what you get is a LA Weekly story about how
an
Orange
OC
County,
Weekly,
an OC Weekly.
I know what you're talking about.
And Orange County is why it's the effing worst place to live in the country.
Right.
I mean,
which was kind of, in fairness to OC Weekly, first of all, it says a lot that Orange County's got this sassy alternative paper, which is kind of cool, and it was a little tongue-in-cheek, but you're right, and they show a Ku Klux Klansman or something.
I'm not blaming
from 1920 or something.
I'm not blaming the Weekly. I'm blaming that nobody else has been in there. So, for instance, one of the really interesting things we learned is that Blizzard
Entertainment, which
is a big
makes games, video games.
They're in Irvine, big employer, really important. One of the areas where we think Orange County is very strong is the meeting of technology and the arts. And we're probably as well positioned as any place in the country. They could not find a promotional video to send to prospective employees. So they did a very good one of their own. Now we've done one also, which I think hopefully will also be good. But we have not been doing any marketing. When we ask professionals, where would you want to live? San Diego was first. We're in the middle. LA's even behind us. Most people seem to see Orange County as kind of like LA adjacent and sort of, just part of the greater LA area, not a place unto itself, not with its own sort of culture, not with its own brand. So the branding is very poor, unless you think, we should focus on, Housewives of OC and the pleasures of plastic surgery.
Well, in a way, though, any publicity is good publicity, right? I mean, remember Beverly Hills 90210 or whatever that show was? And yes, you came away, but you came away with how superficial these people were, but also they're very wealthy, they're very affluent.
Right.
Don't the Real Housewives kind of also give that? I mean, this is a beautiful, rich area to live in, and yeah, they've got all these scummy people, but at least you're getting something. There's a positive message seeping through.
But if I want to get an employer to locate here, if I want to encourage a company to invest in expansion here, if I want to persuade the 35-year-old graduate of University of Michigan to come with his family here, probably not something that you're going to want to blare.
I get a little skeptical of these Chamber of Commerce type things talking about how great a community is. You think they really do have an impact?
I think that it depends how you market it. I do think they play a role, but I think more important than what we do outside is what we do inside. And this is in the many interviews that we had, we found that executives over and over again said, this place is unnetworked. Nobody knows anyone else. There's no connective tissue between the executives. And whatever you might think of Silicon Valley, that's one thing they got right. They've got this very strong connective tissue. People know each other. There's a, I'll put you on to this deal. Orange County doesn't have anything like that kind of coherent business community.
Then again, probably trying to compare yourself to Silicon Valley is a losing
Well, how about
proposition. They're very unique.
But okay, how about San Diego? How about Dallas?
Do they have those networks?
Oh yeah, they have definitely those networks. Houston, people know each other. There's a very strong sort of sense of business community. Chicago has with all their problems, the Chicago business community projects a very strong image.
Is it because we're a younger community? Why is it that
I think
that's the case?
We have a couple of issues. I think one is where we don't have our own TV, radio. Our media is weak.
It's just us right here, Joe.
Right. And it shows how pathetic it is.
Yeah. I hope I can beat that out. Anyway.
But we don't have sort of a strong media community. That certainly plays a role. And we really have no strong organized business leadership. Now I'm glad that I think partially because of what Marshall and I have been working on, I think there is now a move to do this. I remember we had an interview with the guy who was the head of Toshiba's U.S. HR,
which
Human
is
Relations.
based in Orange County.
No, the Toshiba's they're in North Carolina.
Are they?
Their national.
I'm
office.
thinking of they have a subset here. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
And we were having breakfast, and he said, "Is there a business community here?" I said, "I never hear from anyone. I never hear." He said in other communities, if the people are always trying, can Toshiba expand? There isn't that, that kind of community. When you go to many, and I speak all over the world and a lot in the U.S., these business communities have a very strong identity. Now, sometimes they're completely diluted, and sometimes their message is not done well, but there's a spirit. And I think what part of the problem may be that Orange County is such a great place to live on many levels that when we're done with our work, we want to enjoy living here, and we're not so focused on the rest of the world. That may be part of it.
Would that be a marketing message? We're so good, we don't care.
No, maybe we should do another video, sort of the What Me Worry video. But go ahead.
You talked about the headquarters. It is kind of striking. Orange County, not only have we lost the big companies here, but there's no Google, there's no Apple, there's no Facebook. Even in Los Angeles, Disney. Beyond that, I mean, what is it about Southern California, Orange County specifically, and more generally, Southern California? I don't think, San Diego has Qualcomm.
Right, and of course they could be losing that, we don't know.
Yeah.
But
to a former Orange County company,
right.
Perhaps. But anyway,
which is owned by people in Singapore.
Yeah.
So,
right.
but the bottom line is, there does seem to have been a disillusion across Southern California of the kind of corporate leadership we used to have. When I first started writing about Southern California in the 80s, there were so many big companies here, oil companies, banks, aerospace companies. They're almost all gone. Almost every single one of them is gone. Now these were companies, now you could say, well, they do bad things or whatever, but they employed people, they employed them for a long period of time, they had pensions, they had health care, they contributed greatly. Think of what Occidental Petroleum did for the arts. Think about the old money in Orange County that has, even a company like Broadcom in that relatively brief period. A lot of things were contributed to the cultural life of Orange County. If you look at who our donors are, a lot of them are older. A lot of them are people who have retired from their corporate life. So I think that this is one of the things that I think the people who are trying to organize the business community are trying to deal with. Now, look, we're going to have a different kind of economy. It's going to be arts, tech, lifestyle-oriented industries. That's where we're strong. It's going to be dominated by small companies, individual entrepreneurs. We do very well when it comes to self-employment. A lot of self-employed people here. I'm not saying that we duplicate Manhattan or San Francisco. Quite the opposite. What we tried to do was identify where Orange County is strong and say, let's have a strategy that promotes that. We have great assets here. If you look at the arts, obviously we have the South Coast Rep in this Eggerstrom. We have the Orange County School of the Arts. Mm-hmm. We have so many advantages in that area. We still have a very strong tech base. We have a much higher percentage of engineers per capita, for instance, than Los Angeles has. We have a better educated population. We have this terrific migration, particularly from Asia and the Middle East, of educated, fairly wealthy people who are naturally entrepreneurial. These are all assets that we need to mobilize. Again, we're not going to be Silicon Valley, we're not going to be Manhattan. We need to be something else that relates to what Orange County is strong.
In our last 30 seconds, what would be the one or two recommendations, very briefly, you would make to get Orange County back on track?
Well, I think you have to mobilize the business community, and you have to get the business community in touch with the political leadership, so they understand, the political leadership understands that a strong economy is the key to whatever their social and political goals are.
Is being in California a huge hurdle?
It's a problem. I mean, there's no question that California is a problem, but on the other hand, California is an advantage because it's beautiful, it has a great climate, so it's got a lot going for it.
Okay, thank you, Joel.
Thank you.
As always, lots of fun. That's it for now. Thanks again to my guest, Joel Kotkin. You can watch this show and past shows at pbssocal.org or rickreiff.com, and you can catch our shows and our post-show open mic chatter on YouTube. And follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again on Inside OC. Inside OC is brought to you by
Each new community 5 Point brings to life represents a promise delivered. Great neighborhoods are more than just places to live, they are places to connect. 5 Point is a proud sponsor of public television and community programming.
All your life, people talk about what's best for you. But to most people, it's just that. Talk. Unless you're with Memorial Care, a healthcare system devoted to one important thing: what's best for you.